So a lot of people think they're prepared, but you may think they're not prepared. So what does prepared mean?
Well, prepared means, like I said, you got to be great at whatever you're doing. Even if you're not known for it yet, you have to be developing into someone who can be great. And you know, if you read Malcolm Gladwell, for instance, he believes you have to practice 10,000 hours to be a genius at any particular field. And I don't know if the exact number is right, but I'm sure directionally that's correct, that you need to spend a hell of a lot of time doing something and practicing at it and getting better at it for you to be great. And for a songwriter or a singer, that means writing, that means listening, that means performing, that means practicing, that means all of those things. And if you're not doing that, you're not going to become great at it. I also, most of my songs are in some way a co-write of some sort. I usually write most of the lyric and melody, but a lot of times the music and the backbeat are contributed by someone else, and or at least in collaboration with someone else. And I've always been open to that, and it helps me kind of stay creative and stay fresh. And I think I come into a collaboration with a spirit of openness that not every artist has. Some people are more guarded and more protective about their creative process, but I'm much more open and collaborative, and for me that's the best way to create. Everybody has a different you know, sweet spot and whatever makes them happy and whatever makes them most comfortable. But for me, I feel very comfortable in a collaborative environment. I treat it with humility in the sense that I'm not wed to my ideas. I'm willing to listen to someone else's. I think I have a decent sense of taste enough to be able to kind of appraise whether or not something that someone else is contributing is really quality and good, and I enjoy that back and forth.
Well, I think that, again, speaks to great confidence, because I'm a writer and I don't show my work to anybody because I'm so scared. If they like it, I don't trust them. If they don't like it, I really get hurt by it.
Yeah, you have to open yourself up to it, but and part of it is just being a little bit fearless, you know. I don't know if you can be a little bit fearless, but you know, you just have to put it out there and not be afraid. And of course, I'm in a fairly safe zone. It's not like I'm putting it out to the general public. I'm putting it out to friends and collaborators and people who I know well and whose opinions I trust. And I'd rather them disparage it now than have all the critics and the fans disparaging it later.
So I loved reading that you're so politically active. I am too, and it's very important. But I don't think a lot of artists aren't politically active. Do you think that's important? How does that work in your work?
Well, I mean, everybody has to make their own choices. My thing is, it's not really about me being an artist. It's about me being just a human being and a citizen of the world. So I care what happens in New York. I care what happens in America. I care what happens in Tanzania because I just do. I read about it. I want to know more, and I feel like I'm in a position to help people, and so I try to do that. And that involves some amount of political work and maneuvering, because some of the work that needs to be done to improve the world is done by governments. And to the extent that you want the government to prioritize this or that thing, you have to let your voice be heard. That means as a voter, as a donor, as an activist, as an advocate, whatever you do, no one ever calls here.
Except when you tape shows.
And so, you know, as everybody has a choice of how they choose to impact the world, but I know that money means something. The will of the political will and the government's will means something and really impacts people's lives. And so to the extent that I have any influence of those factors, then I try to use my influence in a way that I believe in and that I think can make positive change.
And this is going to sound a little skeptical, but you think that if a lot of people bark, the government actually changes that much?
Well, I think the government does respond to the people. For instance, in ways that I do agree with, in ways that I don't agree with, you've seen political change happen in the last few years. Obviously, I voted for Barack Obama and campaigned for him, And him getting elected was very different than what would happen if John McCain got elected. And there are results in the country that come from one person getting elected versus another. There's results that come with one party controlling Congress versus another. And so you see it in the legislation that happens. In the last 18 months, we've seen a health care bill pass that certainly wouldn't have passed under a different administration. We've seen education reform pass that likely wouldn't have passed under a different administration. And these reforms, they actually affect people's lives. So they matter. You might say, the Democrats are just kind of liberal versions of the Republicans
right.
in some ways, but even those kind of small steps from the middle that they take, either veering leftward or veering rightward, even those small steps mean something. And so if you have a preference, then you have to let your government know what your preference is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know that book we talked about, The End of Poverty, had a great influence on you, but it's going to take a lot more, I fear sometimes, than some of these changes to end poverty.
Yeah, absolutely. And ending poverty is a really big task, and it takes a lot of political will, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of drive and persistence, and it takes listening to the experts who have shown that they can do it on a smaller scale and trying to figure out ways to scale that up as well. And I think Jeffrey Sachs is one of those people who's spent a lot of time on the ground, has done a lot of work on the ground with various countries, various communities, and he's seen what tends to work and what doesn't. And for me, I know I'm not an expert on international development, but working with someone who is, and trying to bring light to what they're doing, raise money for what they're doing, and bring more awareness to what they're doing in the general public is important for me. And then it has real life effects. We've raised enough money to change a community in northwestern Tanzania by getting water access points that they didn't have before, treating malaria that they may have died from before, and now it's just a short illness that they have and they can cure quickly with a cheap medicine. We've built schools in their communities. We've built health clinics in their communities. We've taught their farmers how to make better use of the land and dramatically increase the yield for the farmers. And so, to me, that's a good use of my time. It's a good use of the $1.5 million it takes over 5 years to accomplish that. And it's dramatically affecting the lives of thousands of people.
Real people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the more we do of that, the more people's lives we're going to improve, and the better we're going to make the world. And so I say don't get discouraged by the fact that it's a big problem. Just bite off what you can bite off as an individual, and then hope that bigger entities like governments, like the Gates Foundation, or like all these other organizations that get involved, do the big things that work as well.
Well, Gates and Buffett, not to stay on this point too long, but they asked all the billionaires of the world to give some small percentage.
And I'm all for that. I don't believe, hopefully I'll have amassed a little bit of a fortune by the time I pass from this world. And I don't believe in giving my kids a bunch of that money. My kids that I don't have yet, not going whatever, that I hope to have. I don't believe in giving them all that money. I believe in putting it out in the world and trying to improve the lives of people who are truly in need. And particularly with someone with billions of dollars, you don't have to give it away, but you damn well should, as far as I'm concerned. What are you going to do with it? What are your kids going to do with it? It's probably more of a detriment and a harm to your kids to give them that much money that they didn't earn than it is a help for them. And so I think you should give it away in ways that are smart and effective. And Bill Gates is a great example of someone who spends almost every moment of his life now finding solutions to big problems in the world and putting his money and his influence towards solving them. Yeah. But some of them, they're kind of, I'm a left-leaning guy, so you'll see some of that in the music, you'll hear some of that in the music, and it is what it is. But like I said, I think an artist has to have a point of view for the music to have any sort of truth.
Well, I think artists are people who decide what to talk about, what not to talk about, or what to paint, what not to paint.
Yeah, there are choices you make, and you have to go in on that choice once you decide, you know, what you're going to do. You can't hem and haw and be kind of vanilla and bland about it. You know, you got to go in and make a choice.
And I think also artists are teachers. That's why art is so important to our society. They remind us what we don't want to see.
Yeah, and our job is also to be provocative, to make you think, to make you consider our point of view, and even if you disagree, that's part of our job too. Is to provoke you to have that debate and have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the musical industry. Is that something that's fun to work in? Is it challenging? What are the great things about it?
I love what I do. I'm a musician. There's an industry side of it, but at the core, what I do is I go in and write songs, and I get to perform them in front of thousands of people who enjoy them. That is fun. That is great. You know, there are challenges involved. You want to do well. You want to keep the public's interest and their excitement. You want to sell tickets. You want to sell CDs. You want to continue to be successful in the industry. But like I said before, I don't see a contradiction between doing all that and having fun and making music you believe in. And so, I don't know. I hear people complain about the music business, and there are certainly things that you could complain about, but I'm having a great time.
Is it scary? Is it scary performing in front of 50,000 people? Or
it's not really that scary anymore. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to get nervous performing, but I've been performing in front of crowds of, you know, 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000 people since I was a kid. And so you know, you start to get a bit used to it and a bit desensitized to the kind of overwhelming nature of playing in front of a big crowd. And I just don't really get that nervous anymore.
And the Miss Universe pageant, was that?
That was fun too.
I just turned that on, and all these women are sort of in these awkward poses around you.
Yeah.
But you stayed focused.
I stayed focused.
Yeah, you're a true artist. Yeah.